while they were watching your silence, misunderstanding your stillness, and treating your setbacks like tombstones, you were building a legacy in the dark. And now, you're climbing so ferociously that not even gravity can keep up. Here's a fact that might just rattle your spine a bit. NASA has observed galaxies literally slingshotting themselves through space, defying the pull of gravity itself. That's what your rise looks like right now. Unexplainable, undeniable, and totally outside the rules of their understanding. They don't get it because they were watching your struggle like a blooper reel while completely missing the plot twist. You were never the underdog. You were the sleeper cell of greatness. And now that you've activated, they're fumbling to figure out how the one they counted out is the one they need a manual to understand. Let's be real. They thought you peaked when you finally stopped crying over their betrayal. They didn't realize that was just the trailer, and now the full-blown feature film is playing, and it's rated F for ferocious. Buckle up, because today we're unpacking exactly why people are in shock over the level you're climbing, how you had it in you all along, and why your very existence is shattering their comfortable illusions like a wrecking ball in slow motion. And don't worry, by the end of this, we're handing out neck braces for all the heads you've got turning. Number 1. They measured you with rulers that were meant to keep you small, but you were the blueprint, not the specimen. They tried to measure you using tools built for average people. They used labels, assumptions, past mistakes, and even your silence as metrics to define you. But the truth is, they were using the wrong system entirely. You're not the result of their categories. You're not something that can be predicted by a checklist or fit into the molds they're comfortable with. They thought you were the subject, the specimen, the one being sized up. What they didn't know is, you were the blueprint the entire time. People like to feel in control. They love to think they've figured someone out. So when they couldn't place you in a box, they labeled you as confusing, too much, not enough, or just different. But you weren't any of those things. You were ahead. You were operating on an internal GPS they couldn't trace. And because they couldn't trace it, they dismissed it. That's how most people treat what they don't understand. They shrink it down so it no longer intimidates them. You didn't start climbing recently. You've always been ascending. It just looked different. Your growth happened in silence, behind closed doors, in the late nights when no one was cheering. Your character was forged in moments they'll never see. You studied pain, learned the language of betrayal, and decoded the patterns of spiritual warfare long before anyone thought you were even paying attention. That's why they're shocked now. They were watching the surface while you were evolving at the root. They wanted you to beg for validation, to compete for space in rooms that were too small for your essence. But instead of asking to be let in, you built your own gates. Not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. You realized you were never meant to be inside their systems. You were meant to be the system breaker. You were never the one they should have been monitoring. You were the one rewriting the entire grid. They underestimated you because they mistook your silence for lack of purpose. They assumed your setbacks were final, but every time they doubted you, they were measuring your destiny with human rulers. And that's the joke. Your life was always divine architecture. Their tools could never measure what was eternal in you. Number 2, your ferocity isn't new. It was silenced in the name of survival. You were never weak. That version of you they thought they had figured out, the one they called soft, too quiet, too calm, that wasn't weakness. That was survival. That was restraint. That was you, holding back a storm they couldn't even comprehend. The truth is, you've always had the fire. You've always been ferocious, but you were forced to suppress it just to make it through environments that were not built to hold your kind of power. You toned yourself down because the full volume of who you are would have been seen as too much, too intense, or a threat. And in the wrong place, around the wrong people, that power could have gotten you crushed. What they didn't know is you were constantly calculating. Not because you were trying to manipulate, but because you had to learn the game just to stay alive. You learned how to read a room with one glance. You learned how to keep your real thoughts to yourself. You learned how to be 10 steps ahead, even when they thought you were standing still. They were looking for loud. They were expecting a performance. But your type of power never shows off. It builds in silence and strikes with precision. Now that you're rising, now that your real self is showing, they're panicking. They don't know how to handle the version of you that isn't shrinking. They're confused by your confidence, disturbed by your momentum, and threatened by the fact that you're not hiding anymore. What they never realized is that you were never the underdog. You were the one who had every reason to destroy everything and everyone, but chose peace instead. You weren't quiet because you had nothing to say. You were silent because you knew not everyone was worthy of hearing the roar. And now that you're stepping into your fullness, they're shocked, because they thought they already saw everything you had to offer. They didn't realize the person they thought they knew was the bare minimum version of you. You were surviving, not thriving. You were conserving your energy, not lacking it. You were quiet, not because you were small, but because you were a giant, crouching. And now you're standing, and suddenly nothing looks the same.